from Don Warner Music, 401 Libby Avenue, representing several professional sound product lines such as Yamaha, Marshall, Roland, and Pearl Percussion. And by WRXL 102 FM, Richmond's original home of rock and roll, playing the classics of the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Rock School is made possible in part by the Digital Musical Instrument Division of Yamaha Music Corporation USA and its network of authorized dealers nationwide.
Does anybody know?
Charlie, pass me one of those picks again.
It's much too early for this, man.
No idea. Soon.
Well, I guess it's going to be...
We're supposed to go to the town at the start.
Hey guys, what key is this?
Hi, my name is Herbie Hancock, and this is Rock School. Welcome back to Rock School, the series that takes you behind the sounds to see how today's music is made and played. This show makes every second count, and it's about time, because we'll be looking at rhythm. Rhythm is the natural flow of a song. It's also the ironclad law of the ocean, the planets, or for that matter, life itself. If you've ever experienced bad timing or had a day when you just feel completely out of sync, you can understand how important rhythm is. And in music, well, as they used to say, it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. Rock music began as a rhythm, as primal as a human heartbeat. And it remains just that essential. Although rhythm seems more prominent on groove-oriented dance music, there is rhythm to all music and therefore to all instruments. In this show, we'll work out on some rhythm exercises, and we'll see Elton John give his keyboards a good workout. We'll also hear some rockin' piano boogie, as our rock school friends would say, from Jules Holland. Plus, we'll get some insight on reggae rhythms from the Pulse and Steel Pulse keyboardist Selwyn Brown. And now, the beat must go on.
A little bit of techno flash funk there to start off this session of Rock School. As we promised earlier, we're going to look at more exciting ways of playing the keyboards with two hands. We're also going to be looking at the way in which the roles of the other instruments have changed because of the addition of rhythm keyboards to a band's lineup.
Even in these days of sequences and MIDI, there's often no substitute for good old piano playing, coordinating all available limbs with a bit of walking bass, block chords, trills, or your fanciest licks. Especially if you want to boogie down like the amazing Jules Holland of Squeeze.
In order to build up that level of coordination and to strengthen whichever who's your weaker hand, obviously you're going to have to do some practice. But the thing is, where to begin? Well, you could start with some simple rhythms, maybe play quarter notes in the right hand like this. Now quarters in the left. Now both together. Now alternate them. Now alternate eighths in the left and quarters in the right. Quarters in the left and eighths in the right. Now swap them around. Now mix them up and come up with something fancy.
You can hear solid rhythmic playing in the music of Elton John. Notice how his piano style fits in with the drums on this track, Love Lies Bleeding.
In time, coordination like this becomes second nature to you. But one way of building up this kind of solid rhythm playing is to notice how often it ties in with some drum kit patterns. You can imagine the left and right hand working together like a bass drum and snare. Or like this.
Let's have a look at a slightly more unusual aspect of coordination on the drum kit. Now, most drummers play like this. Cross over to the hi-hat, like this. Now, it's probably been more sensible to go from the cymbal to here. Now, the problem is, of course, that most people's left hand isn't as good as the right hand, and I'm certainly one of those people, and I'm not going to try and con you that I can play left-handed very well. However, there are certain things happening now involving the left hand, and this is at least partially the result of drum machines, which of course don't have weak left hands, they don't have coordination problems. So, if we take another common rhythm, this one, it's more economical to do it like this. Leaves the right hand free for a bit of stick juggling maybe, or better still, to play on the ride cymbal like this. Or to play on the tom-toms maybe. Now, this leads to a more open-handed style of playing, as you can see, and if you throw in a few double beats, a few rudiments or whatever, you can get to this sort of thing.
On the bass guitar, the starting point for coordination is simply playing a continuous line and muting the in-between notes. However, in funk, one has to build up to really complex patterns between the left and right hand. Take this pattern played by the thumb, for example. It sounds really simple on its own. The trouble is, you have to fit this rhythm against it. Now, if you fit the two hands together, you get the complete rhythm.
Getting back to the piano for a moment, the style requiring the most complex two-handed keyboard coordination is probably the style on which most rock music is based, blues and rock and roll. Now, in the next short piece, I'm going to be playing a few familiar rock and roll piano licks, well, both the ones I know anyway. These include trills on the dominant seventh, or playing grace notes, as they're called, off the third of the chord, or the fifth, octave runs on the blues scale, and of course the left hand pumping away the chords or even a bass line. Right, here we go.
Now, rock and roll piano came into its own in the mid-50s with the emergence of players like Little Richard, Fats Domino and Jerry Lee Lewis. Much of the inspiration for their sound, though, came from earlier boogie-woogie players. Here's someone with an encyclopedic knowledge of these early stylists, the astonishingly talented Jules Holland, playing a bit of Fats Domino here. What about some Big Joe Turner? Surely you're too young to remember Pine Top Smith. Okay, let's hear some Jerry Lee Lewis.
In talking specifically about rock and roll piano, there are lots of there is a roll which works quite well, which is taking you can either take a third or a fifth or whatever and just roll it. Boring on its own, but with the left hand or a group or a rhythm section, it's actually very effective, and it'll give it. In fact, a roll is a bit like works a bit like a tambourine when a tambourine's on a record, or a ride cymbal, and it gives the thing fluency, i.e. And of course, the famous boogie-woogie right hand is from the first. They say it was the first boogie-woogie record ever. I don't know whether that's true or not. Which is the Pine Top Smith right hand, which still you hear in rhythm and blues records all the time, played on the guitar, the organ, which is. Rock and roll now, like old rock and roll, is a bit like trad jazz must have been 30 years ago. In other words, it's something that you hark back to. But when done well, it is a very exciting thing. You have to put things in the context of the time. The same with the big band things. If you hear a big band thing from the time, you hear it's very exciting upfront record with lots of excitement in it. You hear Victor Sylvester now, and it doesn't quite have, you know, in a hall now, it doesn't have quite that sort of exciting edge to it. Anyway, neither here nor there. There was a tangent. Here is a rock and roll lick. The rolled note is another one. If you were going to do a little riff like that, but if you... Lots of little rolls, and the only way to do it, as they say, is practice. I've been doing it for years and haven't quite got it right yet, but I will eventually.
The kind of playing style Jules is demonstrating there involves a high level of coordination between the right and left hand. Now, in modern rock music, a synth will usually play a specific part in a particular song, and so you wouldn't usually use both hands to play it. So it's easy to think that two-handed playing skills aren't particularly relevant nowadays. However, if you've got a multi-keyboard setup like this, you'll find yourself often playing different keyboard parts on different synths, and if they're different rhythmically, you'll need to have got your coordination together. The next piece starts off on piano only, and then the band mercilessly steal the separate parts I'm playing, so I have to think of something else to play. I'll still be using both hands, but they'll be playing different keyboards.
Now, this principle of rhythmic deployment is largely what defines different styles of music, and the clearest example that we could think of is in reggae. So we asked steel pulse keyboard player Selwyn Brown to explain.
Like in the early days, it was concentrated mostly on like the skank, which is like the piano, which is like, you know, which is drop on like, because the way we count is like 1, 2, 3, 4. So like the second and the fourth beat, you know, sort of drop the skank. That was like the early days. And we have something that we call like the shuffle, which I'll demonstrate now on the DX7. But in the early days, it used to be on stuff like the Hammond C3, and like the shuffle is just like it's like. And like you imagine that the right hand's playing like the piano, and like the drums are playing a toof, calf, a toof, calf, you know. And then nowadays you find that they're putting more of like the funk influences in, you know. So you might have like a funk bass line, or like even like a James Brown, and then find. So you find that, you know, simple little things like these make people start listening and they start hearing different sounds and they want to get those sounds into the music. So this helps the music to progress.
Selwyn showed us there the two most familiar reggae keyboard parts. The first is the skank, which often doubles the guitar on beats 2 and 4 of the bar, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. The other is the shuffle or bubble, where the left hand plays between the beats of the bar. And the right hand plays the skank as before.
If the role of keyboard is extended to include the use of samplers and synths, then the guitar is free to do other things. This is happening already with bands like Bloodfire Posse, and in the UK with our own very special Steel Pulse. Here's Selwyn Brown again on the changes that synths have brought to the reggae sound.
Sometimes we'll be in the studio, we'll lay down the basic tracks, like say either the drum machine or a real drummer, and the bass line. Then we lay down the piano, which is what we call the skank. Then we start building on top of that with a synthesizer melody. Sometimes it would just be like a Rhodes, or it might be like a warm flute sound or something like that. Then later on, we go into the more sort of synthetic sounds, you know. It's just to sort of decorate the music and make it more interesting, you know, because we sort of listen to a lot of other kinds of music as well, and we try and bring those influences in, and we still keep the roots because the bass and the drums and the skank is still there.
In reggae, the keyboard and the guitar play a very similar part, and this can sound good in any style of music, but sometimes it can be more effective to contrast what you play. In this next piece, I start off playing long sustained chords on the guitar that contrast against Alistair's percussive sequence. Then we swap. I play a very fast picked guitar part, and Alistair plays sustained chords on the synthesizer.
Let's look now at some rhythmic ideas for the relationship between bass and drums. If your drummer plays a pattern that you like the sound of, first of all, just listen. Don't simply plough straight in. Once you've identified the tempo and basic pulse, one idea might be to lay down a steady 8 to the bar. You could then listen to one part of the rhythm and then pick out the main accents. In this example, the bass drum. Now, once you're comfortable playing along, try a more continuous feel based on the overall kit pattern. Something like this. Most of the time, simply picking out the main accents on fills will keep the momentum going and add excitement. You can also use extra dynamics by using unison fills. Now, in the next example, we could choose to do any of these things, but what we end up doing is dependent on guitar and keyboards.
These guys have definitely been doing their homework. Now, don't go away, because in a minute, we'll meet the feet of Jules Holland. And we'll also tell you how you can pick up some terrific home study materials and let you work at your own tempo and go into much greater detail than a half-hour program possibly can. Well, I hope you've had a 4-4 time or better. For now, I'm Herbie Hancock saying, just because a record has a groove don't mean it's in the groove.
So, at the heart of playing any instrument is rhythmic coordination, but also the way the different instruments in the band are rhythmically coordinated is the secret of many different styles. So, stop for a moment, listen to what each person is playing. Sometimes playing together in rhythmic unison is very effective. Other times, leaving space for one another or playing off one another creates the effect that you're after. But, for now, we're going to leave you at the feet of the master, Jules Holland.
The other thing in piano playing is the stamping of the foot. Why do we have the stamping of the foot? Often to keep time, also because it will illustrate windows to us where there are big gaps. In a pub or something, there's no accompaniment or a club, your foot will illustrate those gaps, thus this. Without the foot, it would have sounded all boring.
Hey, wait a minute. You just heard some pretty impressive playing. But you know, you don't learn to play in a group just from watching. It takes practice. If you really want to learn how to play, Rockschool can help. Give us a call. Tell us what instrument you play. We'll send you a video cassette and a 200-page player's guide to rock for just $29.90. It's the most in-depth study guide from serious rock musicians featuring some of the greatest rockers of our time. Whether you're into guitar, keyboards, drums, vocals, soloing, or playing in a group, we've got a video cassette and player's guide that contains hundreds of useful tips, photos, and easy-to-read charts. It's a complete guide to the secrets of rock music, equipment, effects, and rock styles, all from the music makers themselves. Call now. Have your credit card handy and call 1-800-451-7020 or send $29.90 plus $2.50 shipping to Rockschool, WNET, Box 68618, Indianapolis, Indiana. Be sure to tell us the instrument you play and whether you're a beginner or experienced player. Rockschool is made possible in part by the Digital Musical Instrument Division of Yamaha Music Corporation USA and its network of authorized dealers nationwide.